here's what gets me every time I think about this case, and I've thought about it more than is probably healthy. Picture gray. Everything gray. Walls, table, the fluorescent light that hums just loud enough to crawl under your skin. You've been parked in that chair for 14 hours. No food since yesterday. Sleep? Forget it. Your eyes feel like someone took sandpaper to them, and your throat, raw, shredded from crying so long your body ran out of tears somewhere around hour 9. You're 19, pre-law, 4.0 GPA, never even had detention, and the room won't stop tilting. The detective across from you, he's got this face, kind, almost fatherly. He actually reminds you of your uncle, which is bizarre and disorienting, and somehow makes everything worse. His voice drops to barely above a whisper. He leans in. "Lauren, I know you didn't mean to hurt her. I know you loved her, but I need you to help me understand what happened in that room." Something cracks inside your skull. Scientists have terminology for it. There's research, papers, clinical studies, but you don't know any of that because you're a teenager running on fumes, and your best friend is dead in the room you shared, and the only coherent desire left in your entire nervous system is, make this stop. So you say it. One word, 4 letters, spoken by somebody innocent who just wanted to go home and sleep. Detective Frank McKay needed exactly 47 minutes to stretch that single syllable into a signed, detailed confession, a confession mentioning a sweater color, exact dialogue before a struggle that never happened, at least not the way the paper described. I understand why everyone thought I did it. When I watch the tape, sometimes I think I did it too. That quote right there, it wrecks me every single time. We know, with the kind of certainty only DNA provides, that Lauren Harris didn't kill anyone. Proof arrived in 2019, but by then she'd already surrendered 16 years to a confession she never meant to give for a murder she absolutely did not commit. And the question that keeps circling my head like a dog that won't settle down isn't the obvious one. The obvious question, how does an innocent person confess? Sure, that's important. But the question haunting this particular case runs deeper, cuts stranger. What happens to a human being when the most damning evidence against them is their own voice? Let's rewind. March 16, 2003, Eugene, Oregon, University of Pacific Northwest, about 14,000 students, the kind of campus where your RA actually knows your major, where the library stays open till 2 a.m., and that coffee cart outside Ridgeway Hall pushes 300 cups daily. The girl running it, she's memorized everyone's order. It's that sort of place. Sunday night, finals lurking 3 weeks out. Campus has that half-alive, half-hibernating feel. Scattered study groups, someone ordering a pizza, a couple of people trudging home from the stacks. Jessica Langdon isn't walking anywhere. At 11:42 p.m., her roommate, Lauren Harris, shoulders open the door to room 214 in Harmon Hall, dumps her backpack, flips on the overhead light. Jessica Langdon is on the floor beside her bed. The 911 call runs 43 seconds. Officers later described Lauren as hysterical, incoherent. The dispatcher could barely extract a room number. When cops showed up 6 minutes later, they found Lauren in the hallway, spine flat against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, completely still. An RA crouched beside her, one hand on her shoulder, murmuring something Lauren couldn't process. Jessica Langdon, 19 years old, was pronounced dead at 12:08 a.m. Manual strangulation, evidence of sexual assault, no forced entry, nothing stolen. I need you to understand who Jessica actually was, because what follows, the investigation, the interrogation, all of it, makes no sense unless you grasp what her death meant to that campus. Student government president, she tutored first-generation college kids through a program she'd co-founded herself. Every November, she ran the campus food drive. When she died, she was mid-planning a mental health awareness week. And here's the part that really matters for what comes next. She was one of those rare, genuinely kind people. Not the Instagram version of kind. Not performatively sweet. Actually, authentically warm. Her RA, a guy who probably heard his own name maybe twice a year from residents, said Jessica was the only person who remembered it at year's end. She asked about his thesis. She left a thank you note when he fixed her leaky faucet. That's who she was. So when word spread Monday morning, the campus basically shut down. People crying in hallways. The student newspaper ran a special edition. Over 300 students gathered outside Harmon Hall for a vigil that evening. Pressure landed on the Eugene Police Department like a cinder block dropped from a rooftop. Find who did this, now. Here's something worth pausing on. The responding officer wrote in his initial report, "Subject is distraught, cooperative, does not appear to be holding information." That same report would later surface in Lauren's wrongful conviction lawsuit as proof, their word, not mine, that she displayed 0 deception indicators during first contact with police. Not that it mattered in 2003. I just needed to fill in some gaps in the timeline. She was the last person we could confirm had seen Jessica alive. That's standard procedure. You talk to everybody who had recent contact. She agreed to come in voluntarily. We didn't bring her in. She drove herself. That's Detective Frank McKay on the record. Lauren Harris pulled into the Eugene PD parking lot at 8 a.m., her own car, walked through the front door on her own 2 legs, introduced herself at the desk like a responsible citizen doing her civic duty. She told her parents it was routine, just questions, I'll be back for lunch. She didn't bring a lawyer because, and this is the part that just guts me, it didn't occur to her she'd need one. Why would it? She hadn't done anything. She did not walk out of that building until 10:15 p.m., carrying a signed confession.
I want to take you through the interrogation the way forensic reconstructions lay it out, hour by hour, piece by ugly piece, because the thing making this case so important, so deeply unsettling, so absolutely necessary to sit with, is that nothing dramatic happens, nothing cinematic. Nobody screams, nobody pounds the table, nobody lays a hand on Lauren or does anything that look obviously wrong to a casual observer. What unfolds in Interview Room 3 on March 17, 2003 is something far more terrifying than brute force. It's quiet, methodical, and in every technical, legal sense, perfectly permissible. Lauren sits across from 2 detectives. Mackay, 51, 22 years on the job, commendations on his office wall, the kind of guy who makes rookies feel like they're standing near history. He's not a villain. I want to stress that because it matters. He walks out of that room genuinely believing Lauren Harris killed her roommate. He sleeps fine that night, probably. He thinks he did good work. Then there's Detective Diana Wallace, 43, methodical as an accountant. She's got a legal pad and she takes careful, quiet notes. She handles the follow-ups. She'll be the first one to introduce the inconsistencies. First 4 hours, mostly straightforward. Walk us through Sunday, morning activities, afternoon, last time you saw Jessica. What was she wearing? Was she on her phone? Did she seem upset? Anyone bothering her recently? Lauren answers everything. She's wrecked, barely slept, been sobbing all morning, but she cooperates fully. She wants to help. Jessica was her best friend. Of course she wants to help. She seemed completely normal. We ate lunch together. We talked about the constitutional law reading. She was stressed about it. I went to the library around 7, told her I'd be back later. She said okay. She was at her desk. Simple enough. Then Wallace glances down at her notes. You said you were at the library from 7 to 11 p.m. Yes. We don't have a recording of you leaving. I must have gone out the side door, the one on Jefferson Street. I always use that one heading back. It's quicker. No camera on Jefferson Street. Pause. Can you remember who you saw at the library? Anyone who could place you there? Lauren tries. She was up on the 3rd floor, in a carrel, studied alone like she usually does. Might have nodded at a few faces she vaguely recognized, doesn't know their names. What about specifically between 9 and 11 p.m.? She digs through her memory. She was studying, headphones in. She can't pinpoint a single interaction during those 2 hours. So for 2 hours, no one can confirm your location. It's a statement, not a question. Lauren acknowledges it, but she was there. She knows she was there. Mackay gives one of those excruciatingly slow nods. Of course. Let's talk about something else for a minute. This is hour 2. The first trap is already set. Lauren has absolutely no idea. Here's what's devious about it. The trap isn't really the gap. The trap is what her exhausted brain will do with that gap over the next 12 hours. Every time she reaches inward and can't produce a crisp, vivid image of herself at the library between 9 and 11, the hole gets wider, a little more suspicious feeling. She'll start doubting her own recall. Mackay and Wallace will water that doubt like a houseplant. The neuroscience behind this is documented and, honestly, terrifying. Memory is not a video recording. It's reconstructive. Every time you access a memory, you're partly rebuilding it from fragments and contextual cues. Under stress, fatigue, with the right suggestions dropped by authority figures you trust, memories can be overwritten, replaced, manufactured from thin air. This is not weakness. This isn't some character deficiency. It's basic human neuroscience. Lauren Harris has no clue any of this is happening to her.
Mackay steps out, comes back with a sandwich and a coffee, places both in front of her. She thanks him. She's starving. She eats. This is not generosity, it's resource management. He's calibrating her energy, enough fuel to keep answering questions, not enough to mount any real resistance. Wallace pulls out a folder, sets it between them on the table. Lauren can't see inside it. Lauren, I want to share something with you. Think carefully about it. We have evidence that Jessica and another person were in an argument in room 214 in the hour before she died. Lauren shakes her head, fast, instinctive. I wasn't there. I was at the library. I understand that's what you believe, but I want you to think about that evening. Were you and Jessica under any particular stress in your relationship, I mean? No, we were best friends. We've been best friends since sophomore year of high school. No tensions lately? Lauren hesitates. And right here, this little hesitation is where honesty becomes a weapon turned against her. Because yeah, there had been a minor awkwardness, not a fight, not even close, just one of those tiny roommate frictions that live and die in dorm hallways. Jessica had started seeing a guy named Mark, someone Lauren had briefly crushed on the previous semester. It was a mildly weird week back in January when they'd first gotten together. It was nothing. Ancient history, resolved, forgotten, moved past. But it existed. Nothing serious, Lauren says, careful now. She started dating someone I'd had a minor thing with. It was awkward for like a week back in January, but it was totally fine. Wallace writes something down. Mackay, who's been sitting there quiet as a stone, speaks. Were you jealous of her? No. It's okay if you were. It's normal. I wasn't jealous. She was my best friend. Lauren, I've been doing this for 22 years. I've sat across from a lot of people in a lot of rooms. And what I know from experience is that even good friendships have dark moments. Even people who love each other reach breaking points. Stress compounds, finals creeping up, both wanting the same guy. These things accumulate. I believe you, but let me float something. Just think about it carefully. I'm not accusing you. Is it possible you came back from the library earlier than you remember, maybe around 9:30, and there was a conversation that escalated beyond what either of you intended? Then Wallace drops her bomb. Very flat, matter-of-fact. Your DNA is all over that room. I live there since September. We also found your hair on Jessica's body. Lauren blinks. We share a room. We share a bathroom. We borrow each other's clothes constantly. Of course my hair would... I can't explain that exactly.
maybe from her clothes. We hug all the time. We literally hug every day. Okay, here's what actually happened with that evidence, because it matters enormously. The DNA in the room belonged to both of them, exactly what you'd expect from two girls sharing a 14 by 12 dorm. Lauren's hair had been recovered from a jacket Jessica sometimes borrowed, not from Jessica's body. Wallace's phrasing was engineered to imply something sinister where nothing sinister existed. And here's what should make your stomach turn. Detectives in the United States are legally allowed to lie during interrogations. They can claim evidence they don't possess. They can misrepresent evidence they do possess. They can make implications they know are misleading. Lauren Harris had no idea this was a thing. She believed cops told the truth. She believed the system functioned. She believed that if she just kept being honest and cooperative, eventually somebody would recognize that and she'd go home.
Lauren, we're not your enemies here. We're trying to understand what happened. Jessica deserves that. Her family deserves that. You want to help us get there, right? Yes, of course I do. That's why I'm here. Then help us make sense of the gap between 9 and 11. Lauren closes her eyes. She reaches for the memory. She can see herself at the library, the carrel, the desk lamp, the casebook spread open. She can see herself walking in at 7. But when she grasps for the specific images, the 9 o'clock hour, the 10 o'clock hour, it's murky the way any random Tuesday afternoon would be murky. And from inside an exhausted, frightened mind, the absence of a sharp memory starts to look uncomfortably like a question mark. What if I don't remember because something happened and I've blocked it out? That thought didn't originate with Lauren. It was planted. She doesn't recognize where it sprouted from. She doesn't know that McKay has done this hundreds of times and understands precisely how to seed this type of self-doubt. She has never heard of the Reid technique. She doesn't know about suggestive questioning protocols or the research on memory distortion. She just knows she's exhausted, scared, and the 10 o'clock hour is a blank. I was at the library, she says again. But her voice sounds different now. The certainty has bleeded out of it. There's a wobble, slight but real. McKay catches it. He nods, slowly, like a man hearing exactly what he expected. Wallace leaves, says she'll be right back. She doesn't come back. This is intentional. McKay explained it later. When you've got a subject bonding with one detective and not the other, you remove the friction, go one-on-one. Now it's just Frank McKay and Lauren Harris. He moves his chair around to the side of the table, not across from her anymore, beside her. His voice drops. Lauren, can I be straight with you? I've done this for 22 years. Sat across from a lot of people in rooms just like this one, and I can tell the difference between somebody who's fundamentally bad and a decent person who made a terrible decision in a terrible moment. You're not a bad person. She's been crying on and off for hours. Her eyes are swollen nearly shut. She wipes her face on her sleeve. I didn't do anything. She says it like muscle memory. She's probably said it 100 times today, but something has shifted in the sound. It doesn't carry the conviction it had at 8 a.m. The edges have softened, worn down. I hear you, and I want to help you, but I can't do that if you won't help me. Lauren, your parents are outside. Did you know that? They came about an hour ago. She looks up. They're here? Your dad's been sitting out there for an hour. He wants to help you too, but I told him I needed a little more time with you because I think you're close to understanding what happened. Can I see him? You can, absolutely, as soon as we work through this. This is the fulcrum.
Every false conviction expert who studied this case points to this exact moment. Lauren Harris is 19 years old. She's been trapped in this room for 9 hours. Her dad's 40 feet away on the other side of a wall. And the only thing she wants, the only desire still functioning inside her, is to walk through that door and collapse into his arms. I think something happened that night that you're not fully accessing. I think the stress, the anxiety, the grief, it's blocking something. I've seen this before. The mind protects itself. Maybe you went back early, and maybe there was a conversation that spiraled in a way you never intended. Lauren, listen to me carefully. If Jessica's death was an accident, if it happened in a moment of stress, of anger, of confusion, that changes everything. Completely different situation than what we'd be looking at if it was premeditated. Do you follow what I'm saying? She follows. She's pre-law, of course. She gets it on an intellectual level, while her emotional defenses are cratering. You're saying if I tell you it was an accident, things go better for me? I'm not promising anything legal. I'm saying I want to understand what actually happened. That's all. Okay, then help me understand the 2 hours. Can you close your eyes for me? She does. She doesn't know why. She is incredibly tired. Picture Sunday night. You're heading back toward the dorm, walking across the quad. Lauren, eyes closed, confused, running on fumes, tries to construct the image. Jessica said something to you earlier that hurt. She didn't. Not necessarily about the boyfriend situation. It could have been anything. Something small, the kind of thing that builds up. Anything she said recently that stung, even a little? Lauren, trying desperately to be honest. I don't think. Maybe she made a comment once about my parents not speaking English well. She didn't mean anything by it, but it still bothered me. Right, of course it did. That cuts deep. But I forgave her. We moved past it. But did it actually go away, though? Things like that don't really disappear, Lauren. You carry them. And you're someone who carries quietly, aren't you? You don't make scenes. You don't confront people. You swallow it and carry. Lauren opens her eyes. Her expression, I've seen the footage described, is haunted. I loved Jessica. I know you did. That's precisely why this is so hard to look at. The people who hurt us the worst are always the ones closest to us. Maybe you went back early to the room. Maybe you were upset about what she'd said. Maybe you wanted to finally address it, and Jessica didn't respond the way you needed her to. You were exhausted, overwhelmed, stress building for weeks, and something happened. Close your eyes again. She does. She doesn't know why. She is incredibly tired. You're in the room. It's quiet. What do you see? The blue sweater. She wore it all the time, didn't she? She's wearing it. You can see her. She's at her desk. And then Lauren says something she will spend the rest of her natural life attempting to explain. She'll explain it to her defense attorney, to documentary filmmakers, in letters to the wrong conviction organization that eventually takes her case, in testimony before a state legislative committee examining interrogation reform. She will never fully explain it to herself. She says, maybe I came back early. 5 words. That's the whole thing. 5 words, and the next 16 years of Lauren Harris's life begin their long, slow collapse. This section exists on the interrogation video. Here's what you observe, watching it with the knowledge that Lauren Harris is an innocent woman. She's gray, visibly gray. Responses sluggish, affect flat. She cried so many hours her body simply quit producing tears. She speaks in fragments. When McKay says something, she takes 4-5 seconds to respond, sometimes longer. He builds the scenario brick by brick, and she agrees to each brick. You came back early to the room. Okay. Jessica was at her desk. Okay. There was an argument. I guess. She said something that hurt you. Maybe. You grabbed her. You didn't mean to. Maybe. What was she wearing? The blue sweater. McKay fed her this. She returns it like borrowed silverware. What did she say? She said, "Please stop." Again, McKay's words. Her echo of them will be played for the jury as if they constitute original remembered detail. How long did it last? I don't know. A few minutes. McKay says, about 3 minutes? Lauren says, about 3 minutes. By 9:47 p.m., a complete narrative exists. At 9:51 p.m., a written confession is brought in. At 10:03 p.m., Lauren Harris signs it. At 10:15 p.m., she's arrested for murder. Walking down the hallway, she passes her father. Joseph Hill reaches for her. An officer steps between them. Joseph says something in Korean, and Lauren responds in English. "I don't know what happened, Dad. I don't know." He'll replay those 6 words for years, turning them over and over, trying to decode them. Eventually, he'll decide, after watching the confession tape God knows how many times, that they meant she knew exactly what happened and was trying to signal her awareness of guilt. It'll take him 9 years to stop believing his daughter murdered her best friend. 9 years.
Trial opened February 9, 2004, Lane County Circuit Court. Lauren's attorney, Victoria Reid, was by all accounts competent, experienced, and fighting an almost impossible battle. She was climbing a mountain in flip-flops, because the prosecution had one piece of evidence, and it was a nuclear weapon. 94 minutes of interrogation footage, trimmed down from 14 hours. 94 minutes in which Lauren Harris, in her own voice, lays out in specific detail how she killed Jessica Langdon. The prosecutor played it in full, twice, day 1 and day 4. Here's what the footage looks like. And this is what made it so devastating. By the time the confession is happening, Lauren has passed through frantic and come out the other side into a kind of eerie stillness. The exhaustion carried her beyond panic into somewhere almost serene. She speaks slowly, deliberately, makes eye contact with McKay. She does not look coerced. She looks like someone who has accepted something terrible about herself. Ladies and gentlemen, you watched Lauren Harris describe this crime in specific detail. She told Detective McKay what Jessica Langdon was wearing. She told him what Jessica said. She told him how long it lasted. These are not the words of someone confused or tired or led. These are the words of someone who was there. Jury deliberated 22 hours. One juror later said, "I kept coming back to the confession. If she didn't do it, why did she say she did? I'm a rational person. I couldn't get past it." This is what psychologists call the confession effect. It is among the most potent cognitive biases documented in criminal justice research. Confessions override practically everything else. Jurors, decent, rational, well-meaning people trying their honest best, simply cannot reconcile the idea of an innocent person confessing. It doesn't compute. It breaks the logic circuit. Lauren Harris received 25 years to life. She recanted immediately. That same week, from a holding cell, she gave a sworn statement. She had not committed the murder. She'd been exhausted and manipulated. The details in the confession had been supplied by McKay, every single one. Victoria Reid filed an appeal. Denied. A second appeal in 2006 centered on interrogation techniques. The Oregon Court of Appeals reviewed the case, acknowledged the tactics were aggressive, and concluded they didn't rise to constitutional violation. The confession was voluntary, the court held, in the legal sense of the word. In the legal sense. Lauren Harris remained in prison. Her parents visited every 2 weeks for the first 3 years. Then her father stopped coming. Joseph Hill is not someone who gives up easily. He immigrated to the States at 26 with $1,400 and zero English, built a dry cleaning business from nothing over 15 years. He's not a quitter by any stretch of anyone's imagination. But he watched that confession video enough times that something inside him shifted. She described things, details. She knew the color of the sweater. How could she know that if she wasn't there? He stayed away 4 years. Her mother, Maria, she never stopped going. Every 2 weeks, rain or shine, holidays included. But even Maria had her moments, late at night, alone in a house that felt fundamentally wrong without Lauren in it. She'd catch herself mentally replaying that tape. The calm voice, the specifics, the blue sweater. She'd pray, then feel guilty for praying, then pray again. She kept a journal, wrote in it almost daily.
In 2018, a graduate student at Oregon Law School named Priya Sandhu selected Lauren's case for a wrongful conviction seminar project. Sandhu pulled everything: crime scene reports, DNA analysis, interrogation records, the works. What Sandhu spotted, buried in a 12-year-old case file unearthed through a records request, was this: a man named Carl Walsh, 3 prior sexual assault convictions. His M.O., targeting dormitories, getting in through propped open doors or ground floor windows, no forced entry, nothing taken. Sandhu brought the finding to the Pacific Innocence Project. They brought it to Detective Ian Martin. Ian Martin doesn't make headlines. By every account I've come across, he's quiet, careful. He worked cold cases for the Eugene PD for 11 years before moving to a state-level task force. No flash, no press conferences. In the one interview I tracked down from 2021, he deflects every personal question and talks exclusively about process. But Ian Martin is the person who changed everything. March 19, 2019. Martin received a formal request from the Pacific Innocence Project to revisit Jessica Langdon homicide in light of Carl Walsh's conviction history. Martin pulled the original crime scene evidence. Here's the kicker, and honestly, this part makes me want to throw something. The 2003 investigation had collected biological material from the crime scene that was never submitted for DNA testing. This wasn't necessarily unusual for the era. DNA testing was expensive and slow in 2003, and in cases where you already had a signed confession, prosecutors routinely didn't bother with forensic evidence they deemed unnecessary to secure conviction. Why run costly lab work when you've got the defendant's own words on video? Why indeed? May 11th, 2019. Ian Martin receives a DNA match. Carl Walsh's genetic profile was present in the biological material collected from room 214, Harmon Hall, University of Pacific Northwest, March 16, 2003. Carl Walsh had been in that room. Carl Walsh had killed Jessica Langdon. Then Martin did something that proved essential. He drove to the prison and sat down across from Walsh. Walsh was 44. 12 years inside, already serving life, no incentive whatsoever to admit to anything more. But Ian Martin is apparently the kind of interviewer who creates a certain kind of space. In a 2-hour recorded session, Carl Walsh described the murder of Jessica Langdon in detail. Details never released publicly. Details not present in Lauren's confession, including the actual color of the sweater she had been wearing that night.
August 7th, 2019. Lane County Circuit Court vacated the conviction of Lauren Harris. She walked out of the Oregon Correctional Institution for Women on a Wednesday morning. Overcast day. A handful of cameras, a couple local TV crews, a photographer from the Oregon newspaper, and her mother, who had been there every 2 weeks for 16 years. Lauren Harris was 35 years old. She had a law degree she'd earned behind bars. She had a mother who never quit showing up. She had a father who'd missed 4 years and spent the last 12 trying to earn his way back. She had no idea what food she wanted first. She said in an interview, and this wrecked me, that she stood in the prison parking lot for a long time, just standing, because after 16 years of being told exactly where to stand and exactly when to move, the absence of instruction was paralyzing. I kept waiting for someone to tell me where to go. Here's something most people don't realize about wrongful conviction exonerations. The aftermath isn't what you picture. There's no parade, no moment where the world pauses and collectively acknowledges what was stolen. There's a paperwork process, petitions, hearings, court orders, and then a door opens, and you step out into a world that's been spinning for 16 years without you. Lauren Harris was exonerated. She was not repaired. She couldn't recover the friendships that had evaporated, people who'd graduated, married, had kids, built whole careers while she existed in survival mode inside a correctional facility. She couldn't get back the decades spent in a prison law program where she couldn't choose her own coursework. She couldn't reclaim the grief of her 20s, the years she describes as the ones when you're becoming who you actually are. Years she'd instead spent learning how to be invisible enough to stay safe, smart enough to avoid exploitation, tough enough to hold herself together when every human instinct screamed at her to fall apart. What she got back legally was her freedom. What she got back practically was a very hard life. If you run the math the way Lauren says she sometimes runs it at 3 in the morning, it comes to approximately $40,000 per year, which is less than what a first-year teacher earns. That's what 16 years of her life was worth, according to the state's ledger. She doesn't say this bitterly, not from what I can tell. She says it with a quiet precision, the way somebody who's learned to live inside facts rather than feelings says things. She moved back to Eugene, currently working as a paralegal while navigating the licensing requirements for practicing law in Oregon. The bar application process with a prior felony, even one that's been vacated, involves multiple hearings and character reviews. She's grinding through it. She's given a handful of interviews. She testified before a legislative committee examining SB 417, which would have mandated recording of all interrogations in Oregon criminal investigations. In that testimony, she said something I want to share directly, because I genuinely don't think I can improve on it. I've been asked many times whether I hold anger toward Detective McKay. The honest answer is that I've worked hard not to. Not because what happened was acceptable, it was not, but because understanding why it happened matters more than being angry about it. Detective McKay was trained to extract confessions. The system rewarded him for confessions. The system did not reward him for accuracy. He was not operating outside the system. He was operating exactly inside it. And if we focus all our energy on one detective, we miss the point entirely. The system is still running, and somewhere, right now, there's another exhausted 19-year-old in another gray room who is about to say the word, maybe. Frank McKay retired from the Eugene PD in 2011, hasn't spoken publicly about the Harris case since the exoneration. Diana Wallace left law enforcement in 2008 for private security, also silent. Carl Walsh was charged with first-degree murder of Jessica Langdon in September 2019. He pled guilty, received an additional life sentence consecutive to existing sentences. He'll die inside. He has never expressed remorse. Lauren Harris attended the sentencing.
For 16 years, the public conversation about this case was about me, whether I did it, my confession. That's what the case became, about the confession. And Jessica deserved better than that. She deserved to be seen. She deserved to have someone find the truth for her. It took 16 years. I'm sorry, Jessica. We owe you so much more than that.
Here's what I can't shake. And I want to be upfront about this, because I think it's actually the most important part of the whole story. Lauren said this in an interview I've read probably a dozen times now. When I watch the confession video, I still see someone who looks guilty. I still see someone who sounds like she knows what she did. And there are nights, not many, but they come, when I have to consciously remind myself that the person in that video was me, that she is not telling the truth, that the details Mackay walked her through weren't memories, they were suggestions. She still has to remind herself. Read that again. She still has to remind herself. This is what a false confession does to a human being. It doesn't just cage the body, it corrupts the memory, plants a seed of doubt in the exact place where a person should be most certain, their own mind, their own experience, their own grasp on what's real and what isn't. How did I know about the sweater? I understand now that I got that detail from Mackay. He said the blue sweater, and I parroted it back. But in my memory of the confession, I can't always locate the seam where his words stopped and mine started. That's the piece I don't think people understand. It's not that I know I'm innocent and the video shows something contradictory. It's that the process was so thorough, it blurred something inside me, in my own self-knowledge, in the place where I should be most certain. I've sat with this for weeks. We discuss wrongful convictions as though the ultimate harm is imprisoning an innocent person, and it is, obviously. But Lauren Harris tells us they do something else, something arguably worse. They steal the one thing we assumed was safe, our certainty about ourselves.
The Harris case was cited in Oregon legislative testimony leading to expanded mandatory interrogation recording requirements in 2021. It's included in law school curricula throughout the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Innocence Project established a dedicated fund named after Jessica Langdon to support DNA testing in cold cases. These are good developments. They're also not enough. False confessions show up in a staggering percentage of wrongful convictions. The Innocence Project's national data consistently reveals that in DNA exoneration cases, a false or fabricated confession was present roughly 1 out of every 4 times. 25%, 1 in 4. Human beings sent to prison on the strength of their own words, words that turned out to be fiction. The legal precedent permitting detectives to lie to suspects during interrogation, claiming evidence they don't have, misrepresenting evidence they do, making promises they can't deliver, remains constitutionally intact. The law hasn't caught up to the science, not even close. The science of memory is crystal clear. Under sufficient stress, sleep deprivation, and strategically suggestive questioning, virtually any human being can be led to doubt their own recollection of reality. Virtually anyone can be guided into producing a false narrative they half believe. We're not super comfortable with that as a society, are we? Because if we truly accept it, if we accept that confession does not equal proof, that a person can describe a crime they never committed in vivid, convincing detail, then we have to re-examine one of the oldest, most foundational assumptions of our entire justice system, that what someone says about themselves is the truest evidence of who they are. The interview I keep coming back to is a short one, recorded for a wrongful conviction podcast roughly 2 years after her release. Near the end, the host asks Lauren a question. Has anything good come from this? Silence. A few seconds, then, I became a lawyer, which I was going to be anyway, probably, but maybe not the same kind of lawyer. I know things now that I couldn't have learned anywhere else on Earth. I know what it feels like to be alone in a room with every ounce of power stacked against you. I know what it feels like when the system decides you're guilty before you've finished your sentence. I know what it looks like when evidence gets sculpted to fit a conclusion instead of the other direction, and I'm going to use it all. That's mine. Nobody can take that back. A pause. Jessica would have been 35 now. She would have been an amazing lawyer or a politician or something that mattered. Do you think about her a lot? Every day. I think about her every single day. And I think about what I said in that room, what I agreed to, even knowing I was coerced, even knowing the science. I told a detective that I killed my best friend, and I have to carry that. Not the guilt. I know I'm not guilty, but the fact that I said it, the fact that for a moment in that room I couldn't hold on to the truth hard enough, the fact that the truth can be taken from you. What do you want people to take from your story? Know your rights. Never walk into an interrogation without a lawyer, not because you're guilty, because you're human, because you've got a brain that can be broken, because the system was not built to protect innocent people, it was built to process cases. And sometimes processing a case and finding the truth are not the same thing. Another pause, longer this time. And remember Jessica. Please, remember Jessica. She was real, and she was good, and she deserved better than to become a footnote in a story about wrongful conviction procedure. She deserved someone to find out who killed her in 2003, not in 2019. She deserved that.
One last thing. The small detail I haven't been able to dislodge from my brain since I first fell down this rabbit hole. In Lauren's confession, she states that when she entered the room and confronted Jessica, Jessica was wearing a blue sweater. The blue sweater. 2 words, 6 syllables. The detail prosecutors held up as irrefutable proof of Lauren's presence at the scene. But here's what the actual crime scene photographs show. Jessica Langdon was not wearing a blue sweater. She was wearing a gray University of Pacific Northwest hoodie, the ratty one she threw on practically every weekend, the one Lauren would have recognized instantly from months of living in the same 12-by-14 room. The blue sweater was the color Detective Mackay suggested while constructing the narrative. And because Lauren was depleted and shattered and following wherever he led, she absorbed it, incorporated it, handed it back to him as if it were her own memory. And then everyone, the prosecutor, the jury, the appeals courts, the entire apparatus, treated the blue sweater as proof. And that, I think, when I strip everything else away, is what this case is actually about. Not just the 14 hours, not just the confession, not just the 16 years. It's about how a detail that was invented in a police interrogation room, a false detail, fed to an exhausted 19-year-old by a detective who genuinely believed he was doing his job, traveled through the entire legal system for 16 years and was treated every step of the way as truth. A blue sweater that didn't exist, worn in a memory that was never real. It cost Lauren Harris 16 years, and it cost Jessica Langdon the thing she deserved most, someone actually looking for the person who killed her. Lauren Harris is currently 39 years old. She's in her 2nd year of law practice in Eugene, Oregon, having cleared bar admission in 2023. She specializes in criminal defense. She has never charged a client more than they can afford. She has never stopped writing about Jessica Langdon. Carl Walsh will die in prison. He has shown 0 remorse. Detective Frank Mackay has not spoken publicly since the exoneration. Ian Martin is still reviewing cold cases. The Reid technique is still being taught. Detectives are still legally permitted to lie. And somewhere, and this is the thing I absolutely cannot stop thinking about, somewhere right now there is a gray room with a gray table, and somebody is sitting in it, and they are so tired. And the person across from them is patient, and they are about to say a word.